welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, and that is Derrick Bell. I hesitate to say no Alan Saunders today because last time I said that, he just randomly popped in basically right after I said it. But DB, how we doing?
Doing well, man. Unfortunately, it is that time of the year in the Ohio Valley where my allergies are just off the
Oh boy,
chain. So
yeah.
I will try to avoid sniffling into the mic. I'm not actually sick. It's just I can barely breathe
Mm-hmm.
or see. So
Oh boy.
we're battling a little bit of early
Uh,
season or off season adversity, I should say. But I'm doing well, man. It's Friday, very close to the weekend. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited
and
to get on here and talk some football.
holiday weekend as well. So a lot of people off on Monday. Don't know if you fall into that
Yeah,
bucket or if it doesn't matter to you,
unfortunately,
but
unfortunately, your boy is not
all
off on
right.
Monday,
So
but I am
all right.
grateful that everybody else gets a 3-day weekend.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, pull the curtain back. We're recording at 3 p.m. today, so get off early today, and I'm off Monday, so I'm feeling great over here.
That's dope. That's absolutely dope.
And I know you're dealing with this. What is it with me recording with people that have Tyler, my Around the 412 host? We're recording yesterday, and he sends me a picture of SpongeBob dealing with the suds, and I'm like, "What does this mean? Are you unable to record?" You said he's like, "No, I'll record, but I'm just letting you know I'm pretty sick." So like the entire episode, just fighting through it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm the bad luck charm when it comes to podcasting. But Derek, we're gonna dive into things here. Put out for questions. We got like 10 of them, so get as many as we can. Check there. But a couple things I wanted to bring up first and foremost. I had a really interesting question from my guy Cliff the Dark Knight, who taps into both podcasts. Steelers Afternoon Drive and Around the 412. And I wanted to get your opinion on something that he asked us about, and that's the prospects of Calvin Austin III being extended. When you look at the Steelers' history of extending receivers, it's not a very long list, especially recently, guys that have gotten second contracts. If
Yep.
Calvin were to get one, he would be the first one since Deontay Johnson, who I believe was the first one since AB, right? Like the Steelers have not extended receivers in their history very
Yep.
often for one reason or another, whether it's the talent or obviously other factors at play. Guys just have not earned second contract. Juju was back on a 1-year deal, so I guess you could include him within that. Um,
Yeah.
but it just doesn't happen very often. Still the point. What is your thought on a Calvin Austin the third extension? Is it something you've even given much thought to? He took a little bit of a leap last year. I'm not 100% sure that I can call it a full breakout, but definitely took a stride forward and looked like a more complete player and not somebody that is just like a gadget guy. So what's your thought on that and how important is 2025 for him?
Man, yeah, it's not really something that I had on my radar. It is a good question, just with the landscape of that room being that, we
Mhm.
know that DK is going to be here over the next several years because that's like who they made the big investment in. But finding guys, to kind of complement him is really, a top priority, not just before the season, but like moving forward into the future as well. I think it's an interesting conversation. Uh, so we could talk first about the cost of it, right? Because I do agree with you. Calvin took a nice step forward last year. I thought that just with being a year more removed from that Liz Frank injury, I just think that he looked a lot more comfortable in terms of like being able to cut, decelerate, get in and out of his breaks. He looked more like the route runner that we saw at Memphis, the one that, played outside the numbers and, all that stuff. I thought that Calvin really flashed last year. Having said that, like the market for that type of player, so the speed slots or like that kind of, I don't want to say gadgety, but it's a very specified role. You look at guys like Tutu Atwell, De'Ami Brown, those are speed guys. Brown was used a lot more on like screens where Calvin's not really a yards after the catch guy, but like Tutu is
Mhm.
kind of that player
Dude,
for the
this is
Rams
insane. This
offense.
is insane that these
So,
names are. This is literally on Around the. It hasn't even come out yet. The Around the 412
okay.
Steelers show, which comes out tomorrow. Those are the two contracts I brought up, both making $10 million per
It's
season.
this they're
Okay.
they're identical
Yeah.
contracts. I
Yeah.
mean, they're 1-year, $10 million
Mhm.
deals. So I mean that would kind of be the ballpark you'd be playing in. I mean, it's not that I think that that's just a terrible idea. I just don't know if is it worth doing right now? I mean, that's something you could
Right.
probably just do next off season before free agency hits. I would probably just feel a little bit uneasy about him only really having like 1 year of modest production just because he missed his rookie season and then the sophomore season was really troublesome, like not just the film or the numbers, but you and I talked about this last summer. Like the Steelers organization was like, I mean, they were pretty skeptical about like him being able to take a step forward. We felt like just because of like we just hadn't seen it. So I don't think that would be something on my priority list. I would probably just be more fixated on trying to find whatever archetype of player they think complements DK the best. And like, because I view DK as a speed receiver, like that is kind of
Mhm.
his calling card. I don't know if I would necessarily make it a priority to pay another speedster as like
That's
my
fair. Yeah.
what's
No,
your
that's certainly fair. And I think right now it's hard to your priorities are going to change over the course of a season for what you're looking at in terms of the following draft. Other than I think it's pretty safe to say quarterback is going to be on that list for the Steelers. But
right?
outside of that, cornerback, wide receiver are two other positions that are at the top of my mind right now. How much could that change from now to next April? Quite a bit, and we'll see how the season goes. But that's certainly part of the calculus, if you will, in terms of me trying to figure out if Calvin Austin does fit into this picture long term. You saying that about like how the Steelers felt about him, that just resurfaced in my mind. I completely forgot about that. But yeah, that was the chatter that was coming out of the
Yeah.
organization. Like, is this guy going to be a surprise cut candidate? And for all the crap that we gave him, not obviously a little bit for the play down the stretch last year. But more so for things that were going on off the field. That's Russell Wilson. I will say, he got something out of Calvin Austin to even be having this conversation. So which when we signed Russ, I was like, I'm not comparing him one-to-one to the player, but maybe there's something there where he is like his little Tyler Lockett type of player within this offense, and unlocked a little something where, like I said, maybe a mini breakout, you can call it. I don't think it was a full-blown breakout for Calvin Austin last year, but certainly took a step forward and looked like the type of guy where if he's like your wide receiver 4, you feel very good about it, and maybe wide receiver 3 if he takes another step.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of said that he was a high-end wide receiver for it. My comp for Calvin when he was kind of coming up, and a really good outcome for him was I thought Khalif Raymond would kind of be that type of player, somebody that gives you a little bit on special teams, but also is just a deep shot guy. And that like you need somebody like this on your offense, especially if it's probably not as important for the Steelers because of like DK being there, like he's going to be their explosive play generator, while also being the high target funnel. But I mean, I would. It's not that I don't want Calvin here long term. I would just there are probably other areas or other players that I would prioritize extending before I got into the Calvin Austin conversation. But it would definitely be something that I would consider. He's going to, and the other cool part about this is there's a significant opportunity ahead for him because as of right now, there is no wide receiver 2 on the roster. He could see more volume. He's going to potentially even be in line for more snaps. I'm very interested to see. I'm writing a piece right now about like just questions entering, voluntary OTAs and like mini camp and things like that. But who's going to get first dibs at wide receiver 2? Like when they're in 12 personnel, which is like a heavy personnel set that they like to use on offense. So is it going to be him? And if so, like he's got the chance to make him a lot of money, whether it's in Pittsburgh or, in free agency next year.
Yeah, and maybe somebody else would like to weigh in on this conversation. Alan Saunders has jumped in and joined the show. Alan, when I brought in the podcast today, I said I hesitate to say there's not going to be an Alan Saunders today because last time I said this, 2 minutes later, he jumped in. How are we doing, Alan?
I'm good. Wasn't sure if the timing was going to work, but it has. So, all right.
We need your opinion on something. We're still on the first topic of the podcast, by the way, because it's a pretty good one, something we haven't broached yet. The idea of a Calvin Austin III extension, not necessarily something we feel like has to take place right now, but is it something in the cards in your mind if he, has the same type of year, even takes another step forward in 25?
I would think it should be on the table before 25.
Okay.
I mean, I think the Steelers should entertain the idea of extending him now. Like, he's going to get a lot of targets almost no matter what they do at wide receiver. It's hard to imagine him being any worse than 3rd on the team in targets, especially if they have Aaron Rodgers. I think they'll throw the ball more than they did last year. And I think it's a good bet. He's their punt returner, and he's a good punt returner. I think it's a good bet for the Steelers to make to extend him before the season, because if he goes out and has 500, 600, 700 yards, then you're going to pay more. And it's not like they have depth where like almost under any circumstance you could get to the 26th season and be like, nah, we don't need Calvin Austin. Like I can't fathom them like somehow between now and then acquiring so much depth that they wouldn't want him. So as long as the price is reasonable, I'd be in this summer.
So that's the thing that's interesting about it, is because when this got asked to us, I was going through contracts of players that I felt like this is probably where, if you put Calvin on having the year he did last year and say, okay, he's gonna take another step forward or at least put up similar production, what ballpark would I put him in? In like Tutu Atwell making $10 million this year, Dimey Brown making $10 million this year. Is that somewhere within that ballpark that you're thinking? Less than that? More than that?
I would want to be less than that for sure. I don't think he's put up the numbers of that. Although I think Dammy Brown, when I did an analysis of like George Pickens comps and like spread out over like the top 20, I think, wide receiver contracts this offseason, Dammy Brown was like a huge outlier. Like that was just a bad deal. I don't like
$10 million. And I didn't even realize, I completely forgot he signed in Jacksonville too. Yeah, that was a weird one.
But like I don't know. I mean, I think I'd be in for like 5 to 7.
Oh, yeah, sure. See, that's the thing. If that's the number that they can get him at and do it right now, then sure. But I'm just thinking then, like, his side has to come into play as well. Like, is that a contract that he signs right now? Or he'd say, you know what? Like, sure, I could take that right now, but I'd rather play out next year and then try to shoot for 10 plus. From the Steelers side,
I know the wide receiver market is high. I have a hard time seeing him being a $10 million player. But I don't think De'Ami Brown is either, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it only takes one team to to change how you feel about if a player should get or not get that type of money on the open market. All right. Well, I wanted to bring up Derrick's article as well briefly here before we get into like the Q&A part of this from Twitter. Derrick, you put out an article about the 10 best players on the Steelers roster. Obviously, only one wide receiver while we're talking about wide receivers within that group there. But I want people to go and read the article. So, like, I don't want you to obviously spoil all of it, but maybe give us a little bit of synopsis, a rundown of what's within that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of fun off-season articles. I know, like, once we get into the summer, it's just like everybody's putting out a ton of lists. So I try to come up with at least like interesting topics that I think people would want to read. I mean, it's really just something I've done over the past, I think, 4 years now, like basically ranking the 10 best players on the roster heading into the season. I think it's a good reflection point to see, the position groups, the guys that are going to have the most impact on wins and losses on Sundays. And I would just say, like, a couple people that I had some first time inclusions on this list, guys that made the list for the first time, like Zach Frazier. I thought that he was just fantastic over the past couple of days. I went back and watched just a handful of games from specific players that I thought I might want to include on the list. And Frazier, his rookie film is just so good, man. Like he's just way better than I anticipated him being even early on. I liked the prospect, but he's even exceeded my expectations. So I put him at 3 on the list behind Watt and Hayward. And some of that is definitely projecting a little bit because we only have 1 year of film and it is like a list for next season. So I am kind of banking on a little bit more of a leap, but man, there's just not a lot of weaknesses, man. Like his only, I would say, like, flaws early on. I mean, he was a little bit late to pick up some stunts and twists. I mean, there are some plays where maybe he can't get to that maybe the elite athletes can, but dude, just the leverage, the strain and sustain skills. Like, I thought he was one of the best finishers that I had seen on film last year, regardless of position. So he was just fantastic. And then I would say, like, on the flip side of that, somebody who like fell a little bit in the rankings down to 4. And honestly, I really struggle to like figure out where he comes in on this list is Minkah Fitzpatrick. Just because I think a lot of the stuff that he does well, he's become like one of the more reliable tacklers, especially from depth at his position. And I think that he forces a lot of turndowns in the passing game that probably don't get shown on like the broadcast angle, or, you'd have to really watch the all 22 each week to see them. But at the same time, the turnover production, the splash plays just haven't been there over the past 2 years. And it's really difficult to say that the Steelers are going to be willing to pay like that type of cap hit in 2026 if that doesn't return. So he's a difficult one to kind of parse out because I feel like a lot of his impact isn't showed up in the box score. But yeah, I mean, definitely something, a fun article that I enjoy writing.
I might have answered this within the Minkah Fitzpatrick part because I was going to ask you if there was anybody that ended up being higher or lower that, like, prior to writing the article, you would have said you were surprised by where they finished.
Yeah, I mean, Frazier was one because I knew that I wanted to put him inside the top 10 for sure. But he was actually my highest ranked offensive player. Like I didn't really, I will say this, I don't think that was particularly close last year. When you look at the roster and just how the players performed, I thought he was their best player last year. And the DK element is definitely, a question mark because he's going to a new system and all that stuff. And obviously they pay a significant investment. So there's going to be a ton of opportunity for him to kind of vault that. It's just like watching DK's film over the last 3 years and then watching Frazier. I just think that I think Frazier's a better player if you ignore the positional value argument of that equation. So yeah, I mean that, and then another guy who kind of made the list as like a first time inclusion was Nick Herbig. I went back and watched. It actually kind of started as like me curious about what happened to TJ Watt's production down the stretch last year. Was it physical? Was it just like game plan stuff? I think there's a lot of different elements to that discussion that I want to kind of break out and flesh out in a different article. But I was just really impressed by Herbig, man. Like his efficiency numbers, like he led the Steelers in pressure rate last year, over 17%. Half of his pressures came in under 3 seconds. And that's like the quick pressure element of it is it's going to become like a bigger analytical topic around like football discourse, because those quick pressures, super valuable, man. Like we just have a lot of data that are pointing that direction. So I'm pretty bullish on Herbig. So yeah, I had to slide him in to the list too.
Love it. Go check out that article. Alan, you sent something to the group chat here as we were recording. Is this new information, something new regarding Aaron Rodgers? He was with, also, what is he like? Mike, who used to go by Mike Stud, I guess now is just Mike, was at his concert, but also did like a Q&A thing. And I see a clip where he apparently hinted that he's going to sign with the Steelers. I have not watched this clip. So what do we make of this?
The clip is that someone asked him if he's ever going to play for the Bears, and he said no. And then he said, but there is a team that might be going to Chicago this year.
Oh.
So, I mean, look.
All right, so he's signing with the Vikings. No,
this is happening. I don't know why anyone is pretending that it's not. And it is what it is.
Yeah, we got to talk about it. I had to bring it up because, like I said, I hadn't even watched this clip. That's hilarious, though, that just like that openly said. I mean, he might as well have just said, no, but I'm going to sign with the Steelers there.
Yeah, I'll see you week 13.
Yeah. I don't know. DB, anything to add on this?
No, not really. I'm kind of in the same boat as I imagine like you all are in. I'm kind of tired of talking about it every single day. It's just one of those things where it's like wake me up when it happens. And I think we all kind of expect it to happen at this point. So it's like I don't really know what the
and yesterday we talked about it quite a bit on here just because it had been a while since we talked about it and felt like it was, worth bringing up again. And then, a day later, this video surfaces of him doing a Q&A after a concert. I mean, he's literally doing, and Alan brought up great context with why it's happening, that he's doing all these other things and not signing, but he's literally doing everything besides signing a contract right now. Like he's popping up basically everywhere he could possibly be besides signing.
Yeah, the only thing I will say about the Chicago thing is I'm going to the Bears game this year. My wife and I are going to Chicago, so I am excited about that. But no other really Aaron Rodgers thoughts.
No notes.
I think I've got all of my Aaron Rodgers thoughts out there in print at this point or video. So the only thing I'm just excited to see is I'm hoping that he's going to be there for OTAs and certainly for mandatory minicamp just to see, what the offense looks like. I think I have a good idea of, what they're going to implement that he likes and how I'm very interested to see how they blend, Art's offense with what Aaron likes to do. And just like the roles that, all the receivers and stuff kind of fall into early in this process. But other than that, I don't really have too much thoughts.
Having patience has been very important for this entire process. And Hayden asked a great question about patience as it relates to Omar Khan. Omar Khan takes pride in his patience as a GM, wondering if you think that sometimes he can be too patient and it ends up becoming detrimental. If you do disagree, are there any other critiques that you have of him after his first couple years? Don't get me wrong, happy with the moves overall and body of work, just curious.
I don't think we can answer that question yet because I don't think the Steelers under Khan have yet been in a situation where patience has not been prudent. Like he's not had a team that was ready for him to push the chips all in on yet. And that's when you don't want to be patient anymore. Like it's like right now, wide receiver, the Steelers should be patient. They should not make a bad move just because they need a wide receiver badly for this year, because they're not going to win anything this year anyway. If you find a wide receiver that you like that's cheap for this year, great. If you find a wide receiver that you think might be a part of the future, also great. Don't like go spend $10 million on DJ Chark just to do it. Like don't trade a fourth round pick or a third round pick for like somebody that's probably going to get cut in New England. Like, you know, you don't need to you don't need to have urgency, but there will be times as a general manager where he will have to have urgency. And I don't think we really know the answer to that yet. I mean, he's been willing to make moves at the deadline. He's been willing to make moves and be aggressive and pulling the trigger early on things. So I kind of think that he will be, but there's not really a lot of evidence to go on there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why before I turn it over to DB, I continue to say, like, I feel like, you know, I agree with Hayden's last statement there in terms of I'm a fan of what the overall body of work has been. I think it's clear at the very least that whether or not these moves have panned out, you know, via the draft or free agency, I can appreciate the process that's been there. I think that's been the biggest difference between like late era Kevin Colbert and early stage Omar Khan, but he's going to be judged on the quarterback. So next year, when they take that swing, how does that pan out? I think is going to be the biggest indication of how the Omar Khan era is going to go. DB, what's your thought though on this overall subject?
Yeah, I mean, I probably differ from your all sentiments maybe a little bit. The area I would say that I disagree on is the wide receiver thing last year is not something that I think can be like excused or washed away. I don't think that there's any way, like the Ayuk saga or however they planned on replacing Deontay Johnson, like to go into the season expecting to be like a playoff contender and having to play Van Jefferson 700 snaps, just not something that like normal NFL teams do. I just don't think that that's kind of insane to me, because it's not even like they brought in Van to kind of be a real contributor, because they signed him for like the vet minimum, I'm pretty sure. So it's pretty clear that they didn't have that vision for him, and some things, you know, pushed away. But as far as like urgency, if they would have sent 2 day 2 picks, like Ayuk would have been a Steeler last year early in the process. It's just like kind of one of those things, which is maybe what Hayden's referring to, as far as like maybe is there times where he's been too patient. I would say, I don't know if patience would be the word I would use, maybe just like trying to win the deal. And maybe we all just kind of got spoiled about like the Chase Claypool deal, which happened like immediately after he took over. He found the Bears being like complete suckers because Ryan Poles is terrible at his job, and gave him a second round pick for Chase Claypool. Maybe that's like almost altered or distorted his vision for like how he should approach trades, because you're not going to get that type of return on investment on trades all the time. Most of GMs are not that bad at their job. So I don't know. The wide receiver thing is concerning. I would only say, for me personally, I say this all the time, but I think that like good general managers and just team building philosophy in general don't allow the same problems to persist year over year, with the exception of quarterback. Quarterback is something that I think is difficult to change year over year. But for example, if your wide receiver group is completely awful and it doesn't take like a notable step forward two straight seasons, I think that is a team building issue. So if they enter the season this year with DK and probably a marginally better maybe wide receiver group than they had last year, I'm hoping for, I think that would be an issue for me. But overall, I'm not completely out on Omar Khan. I think that we've got to give some time for these draft classes to really flourish, because I'm like you, Zach. I actually have liked the draft classes for the most part. It's just, unfortunately, some of the results haven't been there. Not to say I've agreed with everything. I didn't agree with the Broderick pick. That one's been bad. But like, I love picking Fawatano last year. We didn't get a chance to see him because of health. So it's kind of, it's hard to kind of parse all those things out. And that's a really large scale discussion because he's done a lot over the past 3 years.
Yeah, the other part that I want to say in terms of like, with Alan saying about the wide receiver thing, you know, don't make a bad deal, especially like with the group that you currently have, obviously with somebody that could be part of the long-term thing. That's why, to me, like I keep saying, the misstep to me here within I don't want to keep bringing up the George Pickens trade because I don't think that is the part that I want to harp on here. But you knew that was going to happen. They knew that they were going to move on from George Pickens, whether it was during the draft or after the draft when they got the value that they wanted to get for him. I think it was a misstep to not draft a wide receiver when there was very good value on the board, especially at the Jack Sawyer selection. That to me is one that
Imanor instead of Sawyer feels like one that's going to hurt for a while to me.
Yeah. And I think, that's, not just because of the position he played, but like perfect fit in my opinion. Like, I don't know what his career is going to look like in Tennessee. But I think if he would have,
history says not great.
That's what I'm saying. So like, it might not go well. And then people are going to look at it and be like, see, that's why the Steelers didn't, but like, that's who's to say how it would have gone.
And
it's
Jack
really,
but it's going to be awesome because the Steelers never miss on edge rushers. So like,
but it's a process thing though.
Yeah,
to me,
exactly.
To me, it's a process thing. And like, it is really difficult because when you're judging moves like that in real time, of course, like you don't know, like you're trying to predict the results. And like, we don't know, like there are definitely players that we are wrong on all the time, right? Like everybody is, teams are, evaluators are, analysts are wrong all the time. But just from a process standpoint, that is something that is fair to judge like in real time, in my opinion. Is like, if you know that you're going to be trading a starting wide receiver and you don't have other quality options and your pivot point after the draft is to sign a 3-year-old Robert Woods, like to come in here and play on a cheap contract. Like that's just not, that's not a good process, especially when it was just preventable. You could at least take an A swing in the draft. So yeah, I would agree there. I think what you said, Smitty, too, is a good point about ultimately Khan and Tomlin are going to be judged by how this next quarterback pans out, because pretty much everyone in the national media is kind of doing the thing where they're giving both of them a pass for just being, above average over the past 3 years and kind of keeping this thing afloat while they've been in transition. So, in order for them to take that next step forward, they need the quarterback. And if they nail the quarterback, all of this, like the process to getting there, will probably be looked upon pretty well. Like people will give them deserved recognition. If they don't hit the quarterback, everybody's going to wonder why they wasted a couple Hall of Famers on the defensive side of the ball's prime, for nothing.
The conversation, if they hit on quarterback and then go on to become Super Bowl contenders and, for the sake of just going overboard with it, actually win another Super Bowl or two within that window as well, we're going to go from those complaints about them just making the playoffs and being competitive and not bottoming out to get the quarterback to, wow, it was really impressive that they were able to maintain that level 100%. Of success and stability while searching for the next quarterback, found them, and then were successful. Like it's hard to do, but
it is. I would also say that it is important to remember this when we discuss like teams, the team building process, ultimate goals, things like that. It is important to remember that the ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl. The ultimate goal is not to win 9 games. And I think that is kind of like where the discourse is.
Or a single playoff game.
Correct. I think that is where the discourse, and like we don't have to get into the Mike Tomlin legacy part of this whole ordeal, but I think that is where the discourse is really swayed too far in one direction, in my opinion, is that I think ultimately the difficult questions to ask right now is, are the Steelers closer to a Super Bowl right now than they were when Omar Khan took the job? I don't know. And that's kind of one of the things that I have a lot of hesitancy on, and saying like, would you give Khan and Tomlin a thumbs up for the last 3 years, or would you give it a thumbs down? I definitely can't go thumbs up because I don't think they're closer to winning a Super Bowl right now than they were 3 years ago when he took the job. You could argue there's different factors on why that is the case. But there is still time to kind of thread this really tight needle, because TJ's, still playing at a really high level. If we assume that the second half of the year is more of a blip on the radar than a predictor of future success, and Cam's still playing at a high level, you've definitely got some pieces on the deep side of the ball too. So if they can get the quarterback right, even if we don't think they'd be necessarily Super Bowl contenders, like with a rookie quarterback, if you can do it in 2 years, which is a really tight turnaround, you're really cooking. And I think that some of the process, what you're talking about, Zach, could be reflected on pretty positively.
Yeah.
I don't think they're closer but I think there's a clearer vision of how they get from here to there.
I would say that is true and would be almost impossible for us not to be, because I think that Kevin Colbert was like going into every offseason pretty blindfolded.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're any closer, but I think the path that has led to here that continues straight to there is pretty clear right now, and that wasn't the case before. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but I do think that there's some credit for at least looking like they've got a plan, which they did not for a lot of those years.
Yeah.
At least one more that we got to get to here. Aiden said, who's a player you guys hope to see get more involved this year? Can be somebody on offense or defense. Just for context, his is Darnell Washington.
Jaylen Warren. I want to see him get 30 carries in the game. I also want to see him and Caleb Johnson on the field at the same time.
For the how many was this the third year in a row we're going to be talking about?
However long we've had this podcast, I've been screaming for them to run more pony.
At least
once a week. Continue to do it until they do, or they no longer have two good running backs. I think Jaylen Warren can be a top 10 running back in the NFL if somebody gave him a starting job.
Ooh.
And I think he's that good. And I think I'm excited to see what he'll do with the artificial shackles of we have to play this guy because he was the first round pick taken off.
I mean, that's very high praise. Top 10. I mean, I'm gonna post that clip. I'm gonna post that clip just to see if people agree or disagree, and what we can get rolling. DB.
Man, we've talked about Nick Herbig a lot.
I just say, I mean, like he's your number 10 player, and like, do you think it's possible? We talked about the TJ thing, because of injury, blip on the radar or whatever, but it's been consistent, whether it's just injury or production down the stretch, we've seen fall off. Possible less is more in terms of the snap count, and that's how you get Nick Herbig on the field more. I mean,
that's almost like the slot cornerback conversation, man. That's something we talk about every offseason, and then I feel like we get to the
Pony, slot.
Yeah. I feel like we get to late October and it's like I'll go to Pro Football Reference and look up the snap counts, and it's like, oh, there's TJ Watt at 88% of snaps. Oh, there's Alex Highsmith at 86% of snaps. So there's, I mean, in previous iterations, I think that you could look at it and say like, oh, that's probably not smart. But I mean, Herbig's been around the last 2 years. So that's something. I mean, they did reduce Cam's snap count last year, so maybe they are seeing, maybe they will see the light a little bit with TJ. But I do think that there was, going back and like watching the film from last year, they tinkered with it a little bit. Getting all three of those guys on the field at the same time, it was really mostly like in dime situations. But I do think that there are some third down stuff that you can do with all three of those guys on the field, really, because at that point you're not really worried about the run. You're really just trying to get like your best four guys, 4-man pass rush and go. And I definitely think their best 4-man pass rush is going to end up being, Cam, assuming there's no fall off, if he can fend off Father Time a little bit longer. And then, the two starting edges and then Nick. The big thing for me is like, I do think that there were a couple reps that give me a little bit of hope that he can rush like over the B gap. I think that finding out if he can do that will be really instructive to see if those three outside linebacker sets are going to be useful or productive, because we know that like TJ, he doesn't like to move around, and Alex like has never really been like a a movable chess piece either. So that's going to be interesting to see. I would say Herbig. The other guy that I'm just like super excited about, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like because of his role, is just Fautanu. Like I love the prospect, so I
kind of want to make a joke including him. So I am kind of upset you brought him up. Yeah, as I say, like two of their top 3 draft picks from last year played a total of 20 snaps combined.
Yeah, I was really bullish on Fautanu the player, and I'm really excited to see what he looks like on an NFL field in this offense. So yeah.
I'm going to go a little bit different direction, I think, here. I look at, again, something we brought up a ton was obviously the slot corner thing. I think Beanie Bishop had no business being benched for Cam Sutton last year, and him playing as little as he did with Cam Sutton playing as much as he did down the stretch. I think when you look at the investment that they did or didn't put into the slot cornerback position, we're going to see a lot of Beanie Bishop this year. Obviously, he has limitations that he can do nothing about just because of his stature. So he has things that he's battling against just because of that. But I really like the play. There's just some guys that find a way to just always be around the ball, and I think that he just has that in him. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Beanie. See more Beanie this year, and no aging vet brought in to replace him.
The other thing I would mention about the slot quarterback thing, and this is something I'm writing about right now, but Beanie, some of his limitations, are size and length. Like the guy that presumably might have been brought in to like push him is Brandon Echols, who is also really thin. He's like 175 pounds and has like 12% arm length or 12 percentile arm length. So, it's not like, the guy that's pushing him is a bigger guy that's going to have those advantages over him. You know what I'm saying? So
I think you might see some Corey Trice in the slot, though.
I wouldn't be opposed to that in like dime or third down situations.
Or specific matchups like Yoshivas, where it's like, and sometimes the Bengals put Chase in the slot, and you're like, oh my God, we can't do that to Beanie Bishop. Like, I think you might see some of that. And I think you'll see a lot of 3 safeties too with bigger guys.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, good stuff. Appreciate the questions as always. Actually, there's still some that we can get to over the course of the next week when we come back after the weekend. But until then, DB, tell people they can find you.
Yep, at Steelers_DB on Twitter and YouTube. You can find all my written work at SteelersNow.com.
And Alan, other than wherever you are enjoying Memorial Weekend from, tell the people they can find you.
In my cabin, but I'm parked in the woods today because my sister's got a newborn, and it's loud in the house. Trying to keep things sterile here for the podcast environment. But Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now sites account. SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so me and DB can get paid. Sign up for SN Plus. Please do that. It really helps us out a ton with doing things like booking our travel for the season, which I've been doing. And getting excited to go to OTAs next week. And subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel. That's free. That also helps us out a ton. And you get to join the 15,000.
Yeah, I don't. It's
another bad number.
Yeah.
750. Did we just go up one or? Oh, man.
I think so. I think it was just
759. We had Lambert yesterday. We have Ham today.
Yeah, there's no other name to throw out there. There's no other name. I did look it up though. I don't know, like, did Malik Reed have it like on a practice squad jersey or something? It listed him on Pro Football Reference as somebody that
Malik Reed wore 50.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They did give it to Todd Seabaugh very famously in 1984 after Jack Ham retired. They gave it to Todd Seabaugh, and he was like a 3rd round pick that lasted 1 year. And then they were like, yeah, okay, never mind. Don't do that again.
Well,
they should retire. They should retire 58 and 59 while those guys are still here. Please.
Yeah, I agree.
Do it.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, as Alan said. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything we talked about today, question for a future episode, all that good stuff. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders, Derrick Bell, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.